VR and 360, obviously growing areas of technology, growing areas of content creation. We're talking about devices all over the place. Ken's got some very interesting ideas about devices, and as do our other panelists. We're also starting to see the beginning of some truly immersive experiences, and isn't that exciting? We're going to discuss both the creative aspects of what's going on in this field and also some of the business aspects. Is it mostly news, nature, and travel, or are other genres also going to participate in the VR 360 revolution? Do you need to view VR on a big screen? Or does a mobile small screen work? We'll have very, I think, pointed opinions about that in this panel. We know that YouTube and Facebook support 360 content natively. Post it and they will come. What are the implications there? There's a lot of money, as you know, and ambition chasing VR and 360 at the moment, and that's really exciting, I think. We're also seeing Google getting involved with cardboard. They're now coming out soon with Daydream. We'll hear more about that from Tamzin. We've got Samsung, we've got Facebook with Oculus Rift, we've got Netflix, Discovery, Sky, BBC. Everyone's getting into this. Indeed, virtual reality is predicted by some to be an $80 billion business by 2025, and it might even be even bigger. Is it an entirely new medium? I think there's some debate about that. Yes, no. There are plenty of technical challenges, and we'll hear about some of those tonight. And questions about mass consumer uptake, that's also a big question. Is there a VR app that will do for VR what 360 what Pokemon Go did for augmented reality? If you have an answer to that, why the heck are you here? You should be out making a ton of money, by the way. All right. So first I'll introduce our panel. I'm going to sit down, so hopefully you can still see us. On my far side, we have Tamzin Taylor. She is head of new business development, Android apps, and games EMEA at Google. Google has been supporting 360 videos on YouTube for about a year now, I think. Yeah, since last year. You recently launched a mobile VR platform called Daydream, or you will, I think, on November 10th now. You got a date?
November 10th.
November 10th. So wait for that. Compatible with headset and smartphone. So we're very interested to hear what Tamzin has to say. Next to her, we have Spencer Kelly. Spencer is a presenter at BBC Click. BBC Click, as you know, they're a keen observer of technology. And Spencer not only observes technology, but he's actually done a VR broadcast. So he's going to give us some sort of practical advice from himself and also lessons learned of doing that. Next to him, we have Neil Graham. He's executive producer at Sky VR and Sky Movies. Sky, as many of you know, has been doing quite a bit in 360, investing in camera makers that specialize in this type of filming, like Jaunt. I think Jaunt's actually one of our playpen pals up there. And you've also been doing some stuff with technology, with news and sport, in terms of, I think you did the build-up to the Anthony Joshua World Heavyweight fight. That was a VR
That's right.
thing. So that, interesting things like that. And then last but not least, I have Ken Blakeslee. He is the chairman of Web Mobility Ventures. Ken is an investment advisor to startups. He's also a keen observer of this technology. And I think in the last 4 days, you have chaired about 3 or 4 separate conferences on VR, AR, 360. So you've just been immersed in all this stuff.
I've learned a lot.
You've learned a lot, good. So to start off, we're going to have everybody have a little bit to say. And they've got some clips as well, which will be fantastic. But just to start, to try and just get the audience going, I'm going to ask you one question, and I want an answer from each of you, relatively short. We're talking about VR, we're talking about augmented reality. Is this different, I'm going to start with Ken, is this different than 3D?
In terms of its success?
In terms of its success, in terms of its usability, in terms of, how is it different, if it's different?
Well, I'm not as engrossed
better?
in this whole industry. I'm looking at it from a different perspective. But it seems to me, looking from the outside, that the industry for 50 years has been trying to do 3D on the screen for 2D. And it just doesn't work as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it's a rectangular screen with a frame around it. And depth doesn't work there. The screen has to be wide field of view. And that's why IMAX kind of works, because it's huge.
So for you, the screen, that because of the screen, this is going to be very different and work very differently.
Yeah, everybody thought it was the glasses and whatever, because the cherished television set to this industry had to be the thing. But everywhere we go, every time we look around, we see everything in 3D, or at least 98% of us do. And we see it at the edges, and we look around. I think this medium is one that 3D has a big chance of taking off with. That's because of that, because it's very natural, and we want to see things that we are where we aren't. We want to see. You mentioned travel and so on. We want to see places, things, so on, and visit.
Okay.
And I think this is a medium for 3D. It does have the glasses problem, though.
We'll talk more about that, I think, later. So, Neil, what do you think? How different is this from 3D? Sky invested a lot in 3D. Everyone's kind of backed away from 3D now. How is this different, better?
Well, I was involved in producing some of the very early experimental 3D programs at Sky. And I was very visually drawn in by what 3D could do, but I didn't have that same feeling of excitement and immersion and emotional connection with 3D is stepping into any VR video, whether it's a VR video, VR experience. 3D was a layer upon an existing form of content, whereas VR, it's a new experience, it's a whole new ecosystem. And VR transports you to new places and gives you completely new experiences. It's not, they're completely different. Stereoscopic is useful in VR, but they're completely different,
So when you look at this, Spencer, what do you think? I mean, do you think that this is, if it's completely different, it transports you, is basically the only hurdle the device problem?
It does. I mean, we spent years going to tech expos and being told that 3D TVs were going to be the next big thing, and we kind of went, no, you're lying to me, aren't you? You're actually lying. You're just trying to sell more TVs. And that's what they were doing. So, I mean, there are technical reasons why 3D TVs don't work. There are biological reasons why it actually does tire your eyes out. And also, because we were talking about possibility of making 3D content for TVs and cinema, while everyone renewed their TV to a 3D TV, how often do you buy a TV? Once every 10 years, 15? Okay, so that's the transition period when your content is going to have to be both 2D and kind of have to work in 2D and 3D, but you have to shoot it differently for both. You have to edit it differently to get the best. And so we were going to have 10 years of compromised formats in both. So that was nonsense. VR, I'm kind of sold on it. And I've been through a couple of cycles of VR with motion sickness and terrible graphics. The technology's there now, and it really does feel immersive. And it's not that we are trying to bolt it onto something existing and make EastEnders suddenly work in 3D or in 360. You have to film content differently. Whether it's going to work, I don't know. As in whether people are going to buy into it, I don't know. But at least you're not trying to convince people to adapt what they're already looking at. Something else.
Right.
I think it's also worth noting that with 3D, it's almost like it's found, there's still a 3D movies service on Sky, and 3D sort of found where it will ultimately
they found its level.
But with VR, there are so many different uses, whether it's education, architecture, content. It's,
I mean, I watched Doctor Strange in 3D in a cinema over the weekend, and it was fine.
Did it make it a better movie?
I don't know if it did. I mean, when things were coming at you, the swords and stuff, you were doing this. But I mean, does it make it a better movie? I'm not sure. So Tamzin, from your perspective, I mean, Google's thrown a lot of money at this, and still is throwing a lot of money at this. Is 3D was something that really, I mean, obviously you were involved with a little bit, but I mean, this is the thing, right? This is the nirvana. This is the thing that's going to change the fortunes of Google, perhaps.
Well, we hope so. But I think the key call out for us is that, as you touched on, it is the device, and it's that feeling of immersiveness you touched on. And it is, for example, the fact that you have to create content differently. But I think for us, what the difference is between 3D and VR as we have it today is, number one, the reach and the accessibility. You mentioned the replacement cycle of a television being 10 to 15 years. For a piece of cardboard, it's instantly you can get it. It's very, very cheap. And for Daydream, which is launching next week, it just requires a high-performance mobile phone, and your replacement cycle is much quicker. And it's going to be really affordable. So the replacement cycle and the accessibility is there. The second is the interactivity component. So 3D, I guess you watch it, that's it, that's nice. Whereas with VR, as we see it developing, it is going to be about giving the user agency over their experience and really being able to do more with the storytelling and creative elements.
So really allowing them interactivity to a certain
Absolutely.
extent. Okay, so access to the program in a different way as opposed to just an observer.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, good. So Ken, let's start with you. You have some things to talk about. So you have sort of, 4 minutes or so. So give us your view of some of the stuff that's going on that's cool in VR.
Well, I mean, first of all, a red flag to me is when the technology company starts talking about how cool it is and how awesome it is, and I really always look for the value proposition. And what I'm seeing right now is there are value propositions, and a lot of them are in the back of the room here, real estate, all sorts of things like that. But I've been watching it for 15 years. I really only took it seriously about a year or a year and a half ago because it didn't make me sick. The content was good. I started seeing the reality of it. Thank you, games industry, for being the cash cow that created just an incredible amount of technology, but I think it's time to use that technology. So I don't think we're short on technology. It's really something that can be distributed easily. There is a standard for it. It can be put on YouTube. It can be put on Facebook. I now post things on Facebook that normal people look at and say, oh, that was, and so-and-so was there. They kind of looked around, all around the whole thing. So I'm hot on what I call time-shifted reality, not virtual reality, but time-shifted reality. Real stuff that's being shot that people can watch that is immersive in that respect. Sometimes stills work very well, and video. Short-form stuff. This stuff can be viewed on one of these very happily because you can look all around and see all the stuff. Or, as you were saying, I've got a few gadgets, but just by putting this little clip onto a mobile phone in that mode, and you can watch short film. Now, you're not going to sit there and watch a movie holding your phone up to your eye. By the way, the company Homido has given me a few of these that I can hand out, so afterwards maybe a few of you can grab them. But the idea that it can be viewed by people on normal screens, I think is quite key to the whole thing. Then they will decide they need a better one of these, Google Cardboard. There's a table back there that I just brought in about 6 or 8 under 100 quid devices, not Google Cardboard, but pretty substantial things, including a ViewMaster, the company that made that thing that we had when we were kids. Yeah. They've got one, and they've got all the content, and you actually pull a plunger on the side. You look at something, and you pull the plunger, and that takes you into another world. I mean, that's the thing I think that's really going to make it take off. CGI is getting very, very good. I mean, one of the panels I ran last week or week before was on real estate. And we had a property development company there. I don't know whether VMI Studios is here or not, but no. But they basically give you a walkthrough of a premises that is going to be sold to you that doesn't exist yet. And I looked at some of it, including another one was IKEA, the IKEA catalog. They were showing couches and the drapes were moving with the wind. They looked so real it wasn't even funny. And then another company, I think Matterport is here, that actually does walkthroughs by photographing the house so that you can walk through it. And when you see the CGI becoming so close to reality, and then reality being done that way, you think, this mixed reality, I'm starting to understand mixed reality and saying, okay, I like the house, but I don't like the drapes, so I'm going to, it's funny how when you look at a real house, you're a little bit influenced by the things that are in it and so on, or that you hate them so you'll never have that house or whatever. But this is now mature enough for this industry to take it on board. And you asked how many storytellers there are out there. This is the most important part of it, I think.
So the technology's there.
The technology's there.
As you say, there's
It'll
some
get
very
better.
low-cost gadgets.
I mean, that's
that's
a 360 from Ricoh. It's a 360 camera that I was going to just take a shot. By doing that.
And it just takes a 360 shot?
Yeah.
How long does it take?
It just did it.
It did it, okay. That was quick.
Done.
You're all in.
I
Okay.
could have been live streaming, by the way, but I thought that would
So the technology's
from
there.
that camera.
So you're
this
in
is
your mind, it's really the storytelling is the next hurdle.
Absolutely, and I mean, you look at YouTube and all the videos that are there, and you say, oh my God, that's all. Most of it's rubbish, but there's some new storytellers being born on YouTube, and I think this medium is now at the disposal of the people in this room, the storytellers. Getting yourself out of the picture is a little bit of a problem, but it's not that big of a problem.
I think we'll hear from Spencer about that. When you were shooting
did some
you were
interesting
shooting your
things.
show, you're like, how do I get out of the picture?
Embrace it, but don't think it's right for everything.
Right.
I've actually seen a BBC newscast that was using the technology. It was on the bridge in London, and it was an interview and so on. But when you looked around, there was actually, well, it was the normal scene. It wasn't that great. But then you walk through the Calais jungle in 360, and you look around, and you get it right away. You can see what's going on there. There's people moving. You can look over there. You might even start it again and look a different direction and so on. So I think it's ready. Big challenges on the content. Not content creation, but storytelling, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, interesting. So let's go to you, Neil. When you look at what Sky is up to, give us a little bit of what your experience has been, because you've done quite a bit of experimentation, and you've actually had some successes, I think, with some of your stuff. So talk us through that.
Absolutely. Well, maybe just go back to the reason why I first got involved and why Sky got involved. And for me, it was a single reason. I grew up being a huge movie fan, and about 4 years ago, when I was exec producer on Sky Movies, I was tasked with how do we bring viewers closer to our films? How do we get them more immersed in our films? And so immediately I thought, well, it's that Universal Studios experience. How can we make viewers feel like they're either lost in a film or on a film set and actually have that amazing feeling of you're taken to Hollywood? And at that point, I discovered 360 cameras for the first time, and it was that, at that point it twigged, well, actually this is not perfect now, but it could be done. And in a way, it was frustrating at that point because I could see what these 360 cameras could do, and in an edit, you could see this amazing footage, but the end user experience at that point was really, it was dragging a mouse across a screen and a desktop and not the best experience. So I kept an eye on it. And then Sky, fundamentally we're a content company, an innovation company, service company. So the combination of content and innovation in particular led our, we've got an office over in Silicon Valley, and so they monitor all the new technologies coming out, and they made a seed investment in Jaunt, who are here at the moment, who at the time were a software VR company and camera company before they had an app and content. And so that investment, it was a very early seed investment, but that gave us access to VR experts and access to VR content creation tools, the VR cameras. So we experimented a bit over the 2 years in that time. And so at the beginning of this year, when we set up Sky VR Studios, an in-house production unit, that was the point at which it was all converging with high-end headsets that took it a step beyond the 360 platforms that had considerable success. So when we set out to explore each genre of content at Sky, so news, sports, arts, movies, drama, the works, and so really work out what the uses of VR could be in each of those genres. And not only have we found since that point that there are very clear uses in a number of those genres, but there are uses of VR content that we never thought would be so effective. We shot, we're doing experiments in all areas. We shot at the Calais jungle. It was very, very effective, very impactful, very empowering. And we've done different experiments in different sports. So as you mentioned before, we followed Anthony Joshua on his route to becoming world champion in boxing. And the footage was amazing, because of the access that we got, which we tend to get in sports and, across all genres, but also because of the nature of boxing, the camera positions that we were able to get were, a boxing ring is a small square. VR is all about intimacy and proximity. Right. And so you can give the viewer a feeling like they're actually on the edge of the ring or standing in the ring.
How many cameras did you have around the boxing ring?
Well, for the first
20?
No. So for the first two fights, we had one on one corner, and luckily, we like to think he did it for us. The knockout was in the corner where our camera was. That
was very nice of him to do that. Yeah.
Actually, there was an interesting shot. We had It wasn't attached to the ring itself. It was just behind the ring. But because it was such a powerful knockout, the side of the ring knocked the camera slightly, and there was this little wobble. Right. And so we had a look at that and thought, should we take that shot out? How do we put that in? But actually, it's so effective because the image was well stitched, but it was so effective because that wobble, it just gives you a slightly more visceral experience, and you feel yourself drawing back from it. So. There have been, those kind of learnings that we've had from every shoot that we've done. When we set up the studio, we looked around the company at expertise in different areas that related to creating VR, but we also went out and sourced a few key people in the industry, but in particular a VR creative director, Richard Knuckles, who came from his company Surround Vision, came across the Sky. So
are you sort of moved on from 360 and just doing VR, or do you consider them sort of a continuum, or are they two separate things, or how do you think of the two?
Well, this is a question that we could probably talk about for a long time. We see them both in the same part. It's definitely a continuum. And actually, going back to Anthony Joshua, that's probably one of the most immersive experiences I've had in VR, because you feel like you're at the event and the atmosphere, the crowd are right there, they're on top of you. So to me, that is virtual reality. You feel like you're there. But when it comes to interactivity, we're developing our app to roll out onto more interactive platforms, and we're developing with Google Daydream at the moment. But so we're adding interactivity as it goes. But as you were talking about before, getting broad reach, broad distribution, and just getting people watching VR. That's the important part of where we are at the moment.
So just one more question about studios, and then I want you to run your tape, or your clip, right? That shows some of what you're doing. But how many people are actually in Sky VR studios, and how much content are you actually producing?
So we have 10 people who are in
Or has it been running? It has been running. Have people been watching this? This is Sky stuff. Okay, so I want you to run it again. Right, so go ahead. Keep talking.
So we've got 10 people who are working in the core VR team. But one of the important things that we put together is we've brought our content production team together with our app team, our app development team, because that is that combination of content and code really that will ultimately drive it forward. And we're finding that putting our creatives together with our UX designers and our coders, and you just put those creative geniuses in a room together, and the ideas that come out of it, and the methods of shooting and the methods of pre-visualization and production, bring all that together is that's what's going to move us forward quickly. But we'd be very arrogant to think that our small studio inside Sky could do it all. I mean, we've got access to all of the different content points and the content owners, but we really want to we want to sort of help the creative community. So on the app, we're aggregating third-party content, as well as a couple of months ago we announced that we're going to start commissioning a small number of high-end VR films, because part of what we've done in setting up Sky VR Studios is expanding our relationships with everyone from boutique VR companies like Visualize, like Surround Vision, these companies who are making incredible content, both here and all over the world really. But from them right up to the tech giants, who obviously we've got a large interest in furthering those kind of partnerships, so that we can grow VR together and grow what VR is capable of together.
Now, you talked about sports, and it makes perfect sense, like the boxing thing's a perfect example. What about, people always hold up drama as the problem area. Do you think that it works in drama? And somebody else, you other guys might have some input on this too, but what's your view on that? Because I think you've done some VR on Britannia, or not?
Yeah. Drama's a longer burn, definitely, than sports and events. But I think one of the things is that the experiences for shooting and storytelling, they're much shorter at the moment in VR, partly because of the comfort of the headsets, but partly because I think you're able to do a lot more in a short period of time when you're placing someone in an environment, rather than just having them watch a series of pictures. So the environment really helps. Drama, it does have challenges, but we've been working quite closely with the drama department, and are doing a few sessions with a few breakfasts of the drama team, where we're talking to the drama creators out there, the real experts of creating drama, and marrying up VR expertise with with drama, and it does have challenges, but we've seen some tremendous footage, and actually the scenes that we shot on Britannia to begin with, the first lot of shooting we've done were, it was shot at Stonehenge, and it was a Druid sacrificial scene.
That makes
and
perfect sense.
yeah. Well, it does, but interesting.
You got the circle of stones. It's a limited environment. You can feel like you're there.
There's something all around. It was seen with 200 extras, and we were.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the key things there was that the producers and directors of the series were completely on board, and they wanted to experiment with VR. When VR is seen as a sidebar to anything else that's going on, it doesn't really work. You can't place a VR camera out of the way of traditional cameras.
Right.
You have to be shooting forward. And a lot of that was done to begin with.
Point.
There are VR. Lots of sports have been shot with VR cameras in in the back seats in stadiums, and a lot of there've been quite a few 360 videos at the political debates in the States, and the closest you can get is the press pen at the back of the room. And really, you can't see anything. You can't zoom in VR, so you can't see the reaction on their faces. What you can see is the reaction of the press, or the people behind you, whether they're horrified or not.
Horrified.
Yeah.
Well, there's been a lot of that, I'm afraid. So, Spencer, do you have something to add? To
Yeah,
what
it's
he
just
said?
so in a minute I'll talk about the program that we made, but the one thing that I kind of remember thinking at the time, the nature of VR is that you park your traditional ways of making TV, where you cut between different shots, and you do that every few seconds, and you cut to a reaction shot in drama or a close-up or a wide or whatever. You can't do any of that, because if you're wearing the goggles, you feel like you're there. And if you make a cut, if you make 10 cuts in a minute, people just feel like they're being transported and their heads explode. So I tend to think of it more like theatre than TV, right? So it's a long scene, and the audience are sitting there. Nobody moves. You direct the audience to which part of the stage you want them to look at, and that's a trick with VR. Where do you want them to look? Because they can look anywhere.
Looking?
Yeah. So if you're
Did they miss the thing that we need them to see to get the drama to move forward?
There's two sides of it. You can either put them somewhere where you invite them just to look around and experience it, but if you're trying to tell a story, you have to direct the audience somewhere. And so for me, I think it's more like live theatre. You can have scenes, but each scene is going to be a few minutes long. And in fact, I've never done any of these interactive theatre things that they you can do around London and other places, but I suspect they are the experts for directing you. If you're in a room like this and they want your attention over here, they will do subtle things to make you look in this direction.
Do we have the Britannia clip or not? It has been running. Well, no, the Sky Britannia.
Oh, yeah, we've seen it.
Oh, you've seen that? Okay, fine. Got it. So I can't quite see it because I don't have a comfort monitor. Okay, you saw that, right? Good. Nod your heads. Good. Okay.
Just to
Go ahead,
comment on
Tamzin.
the drama piece, I think what we're seeing is, particularly with Daydream, because you've got a controller which lets you basically navigate. So it's like a stick that, as a creative, you could turn into, a whisk, a cricket bat, use your imagination, or a torch. And so that gives the storytelling, agency from a drama perspective, the ability to put the person in the eyes of the character. And I think that's another way of really kind of getting that immersive drama experience. And again, if you've got a controller, you can change scenes a lot more easily because you're in control. So you might want to say, okay, well, I want to leave this room and go to the next room. And that would be a scene change that you could easily.
Treating it more like a game or a non-linear
I wouldn't say
narrative.
definitely not a game, because for example, The Guardian will be launching their application next week, and that uses interactivity, and it's not a game. It's a storytelling experience, and it's a really, really fascinating one. If you go to the Daydream or Google blog site, you can see a bit of a snippet on that.
But it's basically different levels of the story.
Different
That's
levels of
how
the
they're
story.
doing it.
And it
So
brings up this
You can
question
dive
of-
deeper into the story.
Definitely.
You can get more data. You can go over here and look behind the scenes of that. You see what I mean? As opposed to just, here's the story, this is what the journalist has written. You can also do these side routes, which is what's interesting about it.
And that really kind of challenges the question of how do you create the story and how do you create the drama and how much agency and freedom do you give the user in that scene.
So just to finish up with you and Sky, how many films are you actually going to commission this year? Is it like a dozen, 20?
Yeah, so at the moment the plan is, on top of what we're doing producing in-house and some of the co-productions, we're looking to commission around 12 high-end VR films over the next 2 to 3 years. That's the plan at the moment.
When you say high-end, what do you mean? What kind of budgets are we talking about?
We don't have a set budget
Okay,
for
but
any
you
of them.
mean
No,
premium content, not sort of...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's premium content where we're giving. I mean, we've been asked a number of times, what are you looking to commission in VR? And there's no part of what we're doing would we be saying we're looking to commission a crime VR drama that's aimed at 30 to 40-year-olds. It's so broad because we get completely different ideas coming to us from all over the place. Some of them are a 3 to 5 minute experiential film in the Amazons, and some of them are 20-minute dramas. And so we're having to. I mean, it's quite a big job at the moment, having to work out exactly what we want to commission and how we want to do it.
So you're getting lots of pitches, basically.
A reasonable amount at the moment, and they come from a number of them come straight to me. Some of them come to our development team. Some of them are coming through commissioners as extensions of programs that we already have on air. So we're just sort of we're sifting through and picking and choosing at the moment.
So Spencer, coming to you. You've got some clips to show, I think, or you're going to just show them in the background. So maybe you can talk us through some of your experiences.
Yeah, so we are a weekly 25-minute long technology magazine program, and for years we've spent quite a lot of time looking at VR, and especially in sport. I kind of was sold it in sport because you do feel like you're there as long as you put the camera in the right place. We wanted to see if we could make our normal 25-minute program in VR. I think it's the world's first long-form program, magazine-style program in VR. And we just wanted to see whether it would work. So I know there we go. So if you go to about 11:50, the first thing we decided is that, in normal TV, you direct where the audience is going to look. The camera's there, all the rubbish is behind, that's the important thing, and then you go for a close-up. You might just have to kill the sound, actually. So the first thing we decided is, because you cannot direct where the audience can look, we had to choose great locations, and that's the first piece of advice. Choose a great location. We just had to go to the Large Hadron Collider. It was the law. And it was also just a dream come true for me. We had some graphics commissioned for VR, which personally, I'm in two minds about whether they work, because the action all happens in one direction. You look around and there's just empty space somewhere else. So that's a lesson. But the location is so important. And in the early days of VR, I think that is an easy win. If you can put a camera in an interesting place, whether it's the jungle in Calais or on the Alps, if you go to about 5:45, we just had to go to the Alps by helicopter as well. If you put a camera there...
I like the budget on this show.
You win. And then, can I also say, if you haven't tried VR, looking at it on a screen and swiping at it is the lowest level of VR, and I don't recommend you do it and think that that's the best thing. There's also the thing where you can watch it on a phone, and as you move the phone around, it moves automatically.
Right.
That's also not great. You need the goggles. I mean, the ones that blew me away were the Samsung Gear. They're the first ones I tried, where they're comfortable, and you turn around, and you really feel like you're there, because you can't see anything apart from all this business going on. There's a helicopter landing, for goodness sake. Now I'm holding that camera there, the theta, in a helicopter. You feel like you're sitting on my lap in the helicopter, which is a bit crazy. But it looks, it really does look incredible, and you do feel like you're there. We found that we had to park all of our knowledge about making traditional TV. You can't do fast cuts. It doesn't work. It will make people feel really uneasy. We did toy with cutaways, and they're very slow, gentle cutaways where, we'll gradually mix into another shot and then we'll mix out again. Here you can see this bit. We're having a discussion and I think I'm about to interview someone. So at that point, what do you do? Usually you put the two people in the same shot, or you cut between them. But here we decide, we have a three-way later interview, that is, and we stand around the camera. So you look around and it's as if you're in the room. I think at one point I'm showing you in the mirror, what you look like. And that's the next thing. What cameras do you use? These ones are, I would call them low end, because the resolution you get,
definitely
the resolution you get is fine for a normal image like that, but when you take that image and you do that with it, you're losing a lot of resolution. We used a cube of 6 GoPros that point in all different directions.
That wasn't the jump cam, was it?
The jump cam.
Oh, I'll talk to that next.
No, okay. Can you go to the equirectangular, please, Terry? There's another clip, because I wanted to show you...
It was a made-up jump cam,
So there's another thing. I mean, so obviously there's no behind the scenes in this. You are in the shot at all times. And So you can see I think this is the equirectangular footage. So you see me leave one edge and come on. This is the raw footage that you get out when you're shooting 360. You get this weird wraparound thing. Ignore this bit in the middle because this isn't. This is for something else. But the raw footage it's called equirectangular, and it's everything the camera can see unwrapped onto this rectangle. Here you go.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. This
That's
reminds me of my colonoscopy, but this is going down a large hadron collider. And you see on the left, you see this guy Steve is always in the picture because he's holding the camera and he can't stay, right? So as you're going down the tube, you turn around and there's this guy right there.
Yeah, there is.
And so the challenges for us were this. In one sense, shooting the scene is actually a lot easier than normal TV because you put a camera up, you choose a great location, you put a camera up, you hit record, and then you just do the scene, and that's it. And you've got to get it right in one take, really. So again, like theatre, there's no chance, you can retake the whole thing, but everything's got to happen. Contributors have got to give their answers. We were in, there's one bit where they're filling up a giant pool, because we had to go to the hydrology lab where they're simulating a flood in Switzerland, and the thing was filling up, and it came over the top and started chasing us back. We just had to continue with the interview. So everything's got to happen in one go, but if you're shooting a 4-minute scene, it takes 4 minutes. There's no more camera work to do. All the work comes afterwards, and that guy Steve was the guy, he's the brains behind this. That's where you stitch the image together, right? So you come out with basically this big rectangle that's all warped, and you have to stitch it into a ball. I thought that would be easy, and with some cameras, I mean, the Samsung do a 360. There's a lot of cameras now that do that kind of wraparound.
Tamzin's shaking her head. It was not easy.
Right. It's not easy because...
How many hours did it take?
He's 25 and looking 65 now. Because, there are technical things where if things get too close to the camera, it's a bit like going cross-eyed, and you get double vision, and so he has to decide what bit of the shot he wants to sacrifice. Which bit do you want good? Because it doesn't stitch perfectly.
Perfectly, right.
And so there's a whole lot of the technical stuff behind, after the shooting. So in one sense, I love the shooting, right? There's more energy because you're live. You feel like you're live. It's an as live, basically. It's like doing a live insert for news or something. But it was also almost creatively that limited. You can't do anything other than hit go and then do your thing, but you can direct people to, if I want to point you to somewhere over there, we don't have to cut to a shot, we just get you to turn around.
There,
So you have to imagine that the camera is a person, and just look over there, but you also have to remember, to use the whole space, walk around and all that. So there's a lot of freedom, and it's really exciting, but it's a shed load of hard work. Can we talk about sound later? I won't take up any more time now, because 360 sound is a completely different
We can talk about
thing.
sound. All right, Tamzin, do you want to say something, then we'll come back to things like
sure.
sound, and we'll bring in the audience.
Sounds good. So just think about all of these things we've been discussing around VR. We've been talking a lot about 360 video, and we've been talking a lot about kind of the headsets, which I feel without the controller. And just to give you some insight into where Google's head is at with VR, who here's used cardboard? Hands up. That's fantastic. Who's built for cardboard? Who's built a 360 video? Okay, a few of you. This is really good. So, we've had great success with cardboard. 5 million viewers shipped last year. We've had, across 41 countries. We've had, 25 million apps downloaded. So it's really, really popular. But I guess, my view of virtual reality from years ago was seeing Minority Report. I know it's not real virtual reality, but seeing Tom Cruise just be able to go, and have this experience with voice and gesture control and having the data fly around everywhere is like my dream. So, you think about cardboard, it's fantastic, right? It's really good, it's accessible, it's really cheap, it's quite easy to make, relatively. But, you don't have that Tom Cruise immersive experience. And so for Google, cardboard is the stepping stone and the first step to a virtual reality world. It's accessible to everyone. But the next one is Daydream. But before I get to Daydream, just in response to your point about the production side of things, so clearly I'm not a creative, I'm more of a technologist, so apologies for my lack of creativity there. But one of the things we realised about cardboard was it's great having all these viewers in the market and everyone having a viewer, but the other side of the ecosystem is really important, which is making it really easy for creatives like yourself to actually create the content more quickly. And we realised that some of the 360 cameras were quite expensive at the time, and probably the most challenging part was afterwards, after you filmed it, right, stitching the content together. So Google, being, wanting to grow the ecosystem, created this new software called Jump. Jump's a camera architecture and software processing, technology that basically makes it much, much quicker and efficient to stitch that content together. We then did a deal with GoPro, and they built the first jump-ready camera, which is why I laugh, because it literally is, if anyone wants some jump GoPro here, it's a bunch of GoPro cameras in a circle on a stand. And that is literally it. So it's combined with this camera and the software. We're trying to make it much easier for creatives to build more content. And then through YouTube as a distribution channel, the world is your oyster. So that's kind of how we see cardboard playing out, and it won't go away. But the exciting part for me is Daydream, because as we mentioned earlier, having an immersive experience with a really comfortable headset is important, but giving the user control over their experience. So Daydream, if you don't know it, it's a headset, it's a high-end phone, and then it's a little controller, which is really easy to use.
And it's kind of a fabric-y headset. It's kind of soft. It's not sort of a hard...
Google Carpet.
Google Carpet.
Google Carpet, there you go.
Spencer has a new name for it. It's probably a better name, Google Carpet. Daydream Schmace-name, yeah, go ahead.
Exactly.
So it's 79 quid.
It's £69.
£69,
Available
sorry.
on the 10th of November at EE and Carphone Warehouse and the Google store.
And it was delayed. Why was it delayed?
If anyone here has built technology, these things happen. But I think the headset itself is made from like t-shirt fabric. So it doesn't get hot, and it's really comfortable, and it's very, very light to wear.
But the controller is the key.
Controller's the key, so don't lose a controller. They're the phone is a controller as well. We have an app for that, of course. So I think, the way that we see this moving is it's all about the content, and for us working with our content partners for launch and beyond with Sky, for example, what's important for us is the interactivity. How are you going to use this controller to create a really immersive experience where people can feel totally engaged and feel, they want to come back and use this time and time again.
But the controller allows you to pick where you're looking, right? Is that
Absolutely.
the point? Okay, so that's slightly different than some of the other goggles that are out on the market, right?
Yes.
And that's supposed to going to be your differentiator.
Plus the price point, yes.
Plus the price point.
And plus it's comfortable.
So let me ask you another question. So Facebook, which is a competitor of yours, and they have Oculus Rift. I think Zuckerberg announced another $250 million into VR content, so it's $500 million into VR content. How much money is Google putting into VR content? Are you commissioning content like Facebook is doing to that level? And if not, why not?
Well, Google generally doesn't pay for content development as a
Well,
rule.
you did some channels on YouTube a while ago, but that's another story. Yes.
That's
not you. That's
background,
not,
yeah. But what we do is instead we put our money towards making the tools that's going to make it cheaper and easier for the creatives to create the content. So that goes across the whole Android spectrum, right? If you think about how we support our developers today, has anyone built an Android app?
Yes. I see like three hands.
You work for Sky, don't you? So this is where Google puts its money. We put our money back into the ecosystem to help small creatives and small developers actually build quality products which can scale out through the Android platform.
Okay. So we're going to come to you guys in a second. I'm going to ask a question about sound, but then I'm going to come to you. So if you have questions, get ready, all right? So we talked about sound. Spencer, do you want to start here on sound?
Yeah, basically, again, going back to, I asked the question of poor old Steve, or poor young Steve as he was at the time when he was making the program. Can you make, as I'm walking around you on the glacier, can you make my voice appear to come from the correct point in space? And he said no, and I said why, and he said shut up and go away. And the reason is, this was in February this year, there really was no way to do that. And in fact, it's BBC R&D, as it turns out. We did a story on it a few months later. It's very hard to do because as you turn your head like this, the goggles kind of know which way they're pointing, so the correct bit of video shows. But until very recently, there wasn't a way to get realistic sound to do that. So that's hard maths to have your channels. And BBC R&D have just, so check them out. Maybe it's it's a combination of two technologies, one called Binaural Sounds, which has been around for 100
Yeah,
years or
yeah.
so, and that's recording sound with a microphone that's shaped like a head with two ears.
Yeah.
And what it means is when you listen back to it, it really does sound like you're there. And that's where you might have had the thing where someone's cutting your hair or crinkling a paper bag and it feels like they're behind you. So that's fine, but still if you were watching VR and turning your head, listening through headphones, that sound wouldn't move. It would just stay wherever it was originally put. So they've created something called dynamic binaural sound, which is dynamic. So this binaural sound moves relative to where your head is. So if there's a sound there and you're looking at it and you turn, the sound stays relative to it. I think that's, it's been long overlooked because it hasn't been possible. That will add to the realism of the whole thing, and it's something that you might want to look into, because otherwise you'll be thinking, why is this not sounding as, or why does this not feel as real? If you've got a scene with lots of actors around you, you want their voices to come from the right place in space.
So Neil, I mean, this is really about an immersive experience, right? We're trying to get people there. So sound is important. I don't know, have you run into the sound problem?
Yeah, I mean, it's very important, and it depends on how you record it, then how you mix it, and then how it's delivered. And so it's a complicated process. But you're right, the object-based audio is the other tool that you can use, and people like Dolby Atmos have created these tools particularly for VR, and there are a few companies that we're working with, as well as building out the suites in-house, so that you can create that object-based audio. So if someone walks from one side of the room to the other, the audio of their voice goes with them. And it's so important. And likewise, it's everything from a scene in a drama where you've only got two people talking to, maybe a scene in a theatre where there's action going on all around you. I mean, music, the audio is so important. And if you actually feel like, if you're recording a concert with an orchestra and you feel like you're hearing the different parts of the orchestra coming from different sides of the room. I think there was an Abbey Road experience, which is worth seeking out, because it's a very good use of sound. And then when it comes to sporting events, being able to record all the different channels and all the different inputs, it just adds to the experience so much. And also, it's a really useful directional tool. And in terms of directing,
it directs the viewer where to look. The sound, yes.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, you remember in the theaters when they first did the sound, the spaceship would come over. You knew where you were supposed to be looking.
Yeah. And one of the easiest tools, and one of the first pieces of VR that I saw that provoked a visceral reaction from my wife, actually. It was a horror piece. She couldn't handle it. She threw the headset across the room. That Sky's on the headset. But it was because there was an audio cue that had been timed just in time. So you sort of look around behind you, and a split second before the apparition comes at you. And so it's very effective. I mean, that's a very simple use of it. But
so basically, you just scare the bejesus out of us.
Yeah, B-movie horror. Yeah.
Yes, Ken, do you have something
just
to
a
add?
couple of comments. Number one, you're absolutely right. The sound over there that door opened and it made a very loud sound. Every single one of us looked at it. But when you look at it, the sound has to be coming from there to you as you're looking at it. Big challenge, but
I think
not
it's
an
happening now. I think even since we've done the report, R&D have rolled it out, and they're YouTube, I think they now do some approximation to this dynamic sound.
So I think that's very important. I think being able to turn around, I call the new audience swivel chair potatoes. They're all by themselves, but they're spinning around. If you watch somebody, they're actually, if you put them on a couch, they'll actually hurt themselves.
Because they start
trying to look what's behind them. But look, why stop at sound? This is a 5 senses experience. So smell is the next very important, a very intuitive, very memory jogging thing that actually can happen quite easily. I think there's a demo of it here in the tent.
Is there a demo in the tent?
And I'm actually working with a company that can produce fragrances at the personal level and so on. They're not going after VR right now, but it's all technologically possible. So cueing in the smell of gunpowder when you're in a game or sweat or whatever is quite enriching to the whole experience.
It's interesting you say that, sorry to interrupt, but there was a Game of Thrones virtual reality experience that travelled around the world. I saw it in Sydney, where they put you in a box and you feel like you're in the lift going up to the Great White Wall, and they actually blow wind into the cage when you get to the top, so you feel like you've reached the top and
You get cold.
You get free. Well, yes, it's very frightening.
Wow.
So
Okay.
smell and touch is quite important.
coming.
And the wind, I mean, even people that ride a exercise bicycle have a fan in front of them because they need it. But anyway, I think maybe taste is one step too far right now, but there's nothing stopping it, and it's part of the storytelling as far as I'm concerned.
Is there a question from the audience? We have one here, and there's a mic, I believe, somewhere. Yes, take the mic to this fellow. Is there another question I can queue up? No? All right. Tell us who you are and your question, please.
Hi, I'm Stuart. I'm a digital video producer. We're starting to experiment with 360 stuff ourselves. It's really interesting. Trouble is, right now, it's a really cool niche. Does any of the panel have any thoughts about how it might become more than just a really cool niche, or is that kind of what it's destined to be forever?
In terms of like mass market acceptance?
Yeah. Is anyone ever going to watch, as a matter of course, EastEnders in VR?
Yeah.
Google definitely believes so. I mean, we're expecting to have tens of millions of Daydream devices in the market globally by Christmas next year. There's 5 million viewers minimum in the world today with Cardboard. I think the question is, how do you make the content compelling enough and refresh it enough so people know they have to come back to your app to watch it again and again?
I would say we started off with the question, why is VR not like 3D? I will now tell you why VR is like 3D. Because are we going to have as much content made for it to make this worth it? I mean, having extolled the virtues of VR, because obviously I'm passionate, and I'm very proud of the thing that we did, and it really, really worked. It was a hell of a lot of work. It was a long-form program. I haven't seen another long-form program yet, apart from sports coverage and stuff like that. I have a Samsung Gear which I bought to watch our program.
But how many people watched it, do you think, in VR?
You can see the number of hits on there. I mean, it's not massive.
It's not massive.
But I haven't used my VR headset since. I have not felt the need to go back and do it. Now, the Gear is great because it has no cables, but I can't play video games on that.
Right.
So I need a different one to play video games, and I don't play video games anyway because I have a family. But I do genuinely think games are what's going to drive it, and porn, if I'm honest, because come on, who wasn't thinking that? And it has. I mean, porn's driven a hell of a lot of our industry.
That's right.
But
they always hide the porn people in the bottom of the Palais in Cannes, but they're there.
They're there. Right back, I can see them. But will it be a niche? Yes, I think it is going to continue to be a niche for as long as, until we have something called Occluded Reality, which is a pair of glasses which is augmented reality when it wants to be, so adds stuff but you can still see stuff through it, occludes completely, so blacks out and becomes a virtual reality, but is no more hassle than wearing normal, comfortable glasses. And the company there you need to look out for is Magic Leap, which, do you own them now?
I don't know.
Oh.
They could very soon. You just never know. Deep pockets over there at Google.
So decades, I think it is going to be a niche. It's going to be a luxury, and it's going to be, oh, have you tried this? That's nice. Hand
So
it around.
Neil, what do you think? Is it going to be a niche? Is it going to be a luxury, or do you think you can make it more of a mainstream product?
I think, no, I disagree. I don't think it's going to be a niche. I think VR, although a combination of VR and AR, I think it is going to be huge. I think we'll find I don't know whether it's 5 years, 10 years, I think we'll be doing a lot of computing in some form of sort of AR.
But that's the key there, as you said, a combination of VR and AR, and that's back to those glasses that can do both.
You can actually do both using a phone.
Yes, if you strap it to your face, but you've got this enormous thing there. So I think we have to wait for those before it becomes mainstream, and then we'll see. Everything will happen.
It's interesting to know how long that will take, Tamzin. In other words, if you're saying, would you say 10 million by next Christmas, and so add the Oculus Rift and all those other people. But is it still going to be this thing that you have to wear in your face, and won't it be easier when it is a pair of spectacles and it is less cumbersome?
I watched that TV show Black Mirror. Is it Black Mirror, where they've all got the contact lenses that blend like? Who knows? That would be very exciting times.
If you look at the number of patents that are out there for various different types of, whether it's contact lenses, whether it's glasses, I mean, the headsets that we've got at the moment, I think we'll be probably laughing at them in 2 or 3 years' time. When we first sat down to say, okay, what would a logo look like? We had all these different logos on the board and went, well, every logo that's got headset as part of it is going to be obsolete very
So
quickly.
don't use that.
So don't use that. But to go back to your question, I think this year has been very important because at the beginning of the year everyone was saying 2016 is the year of VR, to a certain degree because there were accessible headsets that had been released into the market, and you had Samsung Gear and Oculus Rift, and Google and Facebook were investing in 360. But this year, I mean, the two important ones right now are Sony PlayStation VR and Google Daydream, because the base is suddenly a lot wider. We don't know when Apple are going to come out with something. They will in the next couple of years. They will, and the combination of those with alongside content companies. I mean, gaming is a different thing, but alongside content companies, there are lots of content creators out there, but it's about distribution as well as creating the content, and that's where we came at it from. We felt that if we wanted to distribute VR content and we wanted to commission it, first we had to learn how to make it. And actually, one of the first things when I was asked when I was asked to formalise a VR studio, I was asked by the company what we would need. And one of the first things I said is we need a director, we need a pool of directors, but we need one or two directors and a creative director who knows everything there is to know about shooting VR. And that was when we brought Richard Knuckles on board, because he'd been shooting VR for 5 years. When we introduced him to the producers and directors at Jaunt, they sort of met and said, hey, how long have you been at this? Most people have been 18 months max.
It is, though, a virtuous circle, though. You have to have content, you have to have distribution, you have to have goggles. I mean, you have to have the whole ecosystem, as Tamzin says.
Yeah, you need the ecosystem.
And, if the content makers are not going to, put their risk on the line if they don't think it's going to make them some money. You see what I mean? So, in a way, you have to prime the pump. That's why I was asking about putting money into VR content, because in some ways, if I'm a producer, it still is expensive and difficult and hard to stitch and blah, blah, blah. So it's not as if you just say, oh, well, come to us, unless you commission them and give them a good budget.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And at the moment, that's, again, just going back to why we worked out how to shoot VR first, before we were commissioning, is that we wanted to work out what the techniques were. It was new grammar, but also how much it was going to cost and what we had to look at in the first instance, because right now where we are in VR, we have no idea at what point it will be monetized in a traditional model, but we're confident in the technology and we're confident in the content and the experience. So the point at which the monetization model becomes clear, we want to know exactly, we want to have been doing it for a long time so that we can get the highest content there. And that's acquiring it as well as producing it.
So Ken, what's your view? I mean, is it going to be mass market?
Well, I'd like to take it from a different angle.
Okay.
Because how do things happen? Do they always happen from the top down? And I guess you mentioned Pokemon Go. Consumers didn't have any idea what AR was.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they all do. Yeah. And they're actually starting to say, well, wait a minute, if I can see that in front of whatever's on my phone, I can see a lot of things. I want information and so on. So that's really turned that on. But about a year ago, I was chairing a gaming conference, and I declared that gaming was the niche application for VR, and I heard these gasps in the room. And I really believe that. I think it's the cash cow that paid for the technology. Now we can move on from there. But the ease, what I'm seeing is people are starting to, was that picture I took up on the screen? People are starting to just take pictures and post them on Facebook, so social networks. But not something that actually you look at and you see all the people that were sitting around a table. You look at the food that was on the table. You see the ambiance of the room, and you go, oh, that's really nice, and so-and-so looks great.
Your point is almost the consumer will help drive this. You talked when we were having our little briefing about sort of the selfie, the 360 selfie or the VR selfie. If consumers start doing, UGC, whatever that version is in VR, you think that will help kickstart the market?
Well, it's happening already.
Happening.
So, and there'll be some very bad content. But I mean, I've been taking things on holidays
Probably
and things like that,
cats.
and doing 90% of it is not really good. It was fun and it was interesting, but some of the stuff that I've captured and shared. So I think it's this idea that people are going to get used to it, like the AR example, get used to viewing it easily, posting it, seeing it, and then I think if somebody can tell some good stories, or I think there's a question about genres here. What's the main things that are really going to make this take off? I think there definitely are some, and people will move right onto that from done professionally and done right.
So it's a nuanced answer, yes, but okay. So we have Teresa, and then there's another hand here. We have where the mic is going. We've got one mic here to Teresa, this one, and then could we get another mic to this lady here? Yes, right there. Okay, good. Go ahead, Teresa.
Thanks, Kate. Does the panel think that there'll be more intense ethical issues around virtual reality because of its potential to alter behaviour? So say with gun violence or those sorts of violent content where people are all in more simulated scenarios?
Good question. Gosh, ethical issues.
Yeah, I mean, we've reported on examples where they put someone in a simulated situation to make them appreciate more what it is like to be a woman, what it is like to be of a certain race, because in that experience they are abused, mistreated, whatever it is, So maybe that's the flip side to what you mean. It can be used positively, but my God, yeah, if you are a gun-toting criminal in a VR game, it's going to give you even more of a feeling that you are that person. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think there's someone in the audience called Jane who's actually built a really immersive 360 experience from her own perspective. And I tried it before, and it does come back to that ethical question of how do you put yourself, or put the user in the shoes of someone who's so different from yourself and drive that empathy. Clearly, we, as Google, we don't want to be promoting any kind of non-ethical violence.
It's also, when it comes to the subject, we've had very interesting or very lengthy conversations with our compliance team at Sky, because there are so many, you've got a lot more picture that you have to comply, and particularly when you're shooting news stories like when we were in Calais, you have to be very careful that, you have to be careful of what you're shooting, but also you have to be careful on how you're reporting this news, and that you're not manipulating the situation, because emotions are heightened when you're in VR.
Right.
So so there are lots and lots of new questions that are arising around.
Good point. Okay, let's go to you.
Yes, I was asked to stand up. I'm not. Quickly, thank you very much. It's very interesting. How is this going to change the shape of the industry? And the research I've been doing, the games companies aren't talking to the TV companies. There's a big divide between the two. I was thinking that what we need is a few takeovers, either games companies taking over the independent sector or vice versa, to make this happen. And as an educationalist, I'm from university, how is the training that we give to young people wanting to enter the media going to change? What new skills do they need?
It is interesting, like Vivendi in France owns television, but they also own, I think it's Activision, and they own the Game Loft. So there is some crossover in terms of some of the media companies getting involved in both. But Tamzin, do you have a view on this?
Just from what we know today, most games are made utilising Unity as a platform to build their experiences in VR, whereas if you look at some of the content that's going to be launching around Daydream, that's long form or traditional media, it's more 360 video. So I don't think the media companies, in my view, have kind of grasped the Unity platform to the extent that they can at this stage, which is probably why they're not talking to each other too much.
I think you should say thank you for the technology and move into a new realm here, because game genres and quality and so on is for a different sector. I think there's some interesting technologies that have come out of it, mostly about viewing and stitching and all of that sort of thing. But try to apply 360, what you're doing with 360, and trying it out with the news reporting and so on. The New York Times gave out 1 million,
Yeah, it was a million.
Google Cardboards in the Sunday supplement. They folded it up, and there it was. Everybody opened it up. And now I think there's 1.3 million out there, and they've got a regular stream of content.
Yeah,
that is
it's
a genre that you're familiar with out there. It's got nothing to do with games.
Well,
But it is 360 video, right? It's not interactive.
Video
whereas games are interactive.
video games have driven the movie industry, and any CGI that's in a movie, and in most movies now I believe there is some element of CGI, that's come from video games. As soon as in our program we wanted to put Astons, we wanted to put their titles up, and you have to do it in 360. As soon as you have to do an effect on a normal TV program or movie, you talk to the games people, because the rendering, the high-end rendering that goes on in movies now came from video games. So I'm sorry I don't agree. I think video games...
But that's the technology I'm talking about.
Exactly, and that's why the video games people need to be talking to the TV. That's where they contribute to this. And also they're much more used to exploring 360 environments, because that's, I was playing Doom in 360 all those years ago. And so, in my opinion, the video games people have a lot of experience, and the TV people do not have experience in a 360 dynamic environment. One particular example, we've talked about how this doesn't make you motion sick anymore, and I've played, and it was a video game in VR, but people in this room could very well make the mistake. In this particular video game, as well as doing that, I could grab a controller and I could drive myself round through this building, and I did that, and that's fine. As soon as I hit up, I felt really sick. Up and down in VR, when you do not feel your body moving up and down, instant motion sickness.
That's right.
And so, there's a whole lot of there's a lot of talking that could be done.
And what about training? She mentioned training. Is there any training schemes in VR? I mean, are you training people at Google?
I think that they'll probably look. I don't know, but I suspect there's probably some YouTube, programs going on, or plan to go on. In terms of Daydream and our efforts around that platform, because it is the Android platform, we will be putting out guidelines and specifications, and there are already help videos on YouTube about how to film for VR, and they talk about that exact moment. If you don't have legs and you go up and down, you will feel sick. So there's quite a lot that we put out there today, and again, we'll be working with our partners to create case studies, to again put on YouTube and make it accessible for all the creatives and developers to look at.
Okay.
And actually, sorry, just on the training, it's an interesting point, because we have a scheme with the NFTS. We bring in digital video students every year. And we had this amazing student that we brought into our VR department in the summer. And he's teaching us. He'll come in. They're so used, that generation is so used to learning the skills themselves, getting these cameras, going home and learning Unity at the weekend. And so he came in. He'd had a bit of experience in VR. And he was a creative director, and we've kept him on. And particularly the NFTS, because we've worked with them closely. But a lot of the schools are looking into VR, and they we went to see the students there, and they had a digital video area and also a gaming area of VR as well. And what that small pool of ultimately about 20 students were doing, the experimentation they've been doing is brilliant, and that's the kind of experimentation that we haven't had time to do as much as they have in the year that we've been set up. So all these people exploring different areas, and actually that's what we found that when we set up at Sky, we were pulling Cinema 4D editor there and a UX designer from here, and it's just bringing these people together to experiment. Cool. They train themselves, but yeah.
Any other questions? There's one back there. It's for, I think it's Neil. Can you get him the mic? Is there another question we can queue up?
Oh, they want me to stand up. I'm Neil Romanek. I'm editor of TV Technology Europe. Want to hear a bit more about writing for VR. Apart from you need longer takes. You can't maybe you can't do a lot of cutting. What about storytelling and writing, and how do you write differently in VR than you would?
How do you write differently?
I personally, I've had the one go at this. I found that you can be more conversational as long as you can imagine. And the trick is always to imagine the camera as a person anyway. But talk. That's how I did it. Talk to it like a person. And I found the medium was kind of more forgiving. You could kind of be less formal, and it just felt better. You don't have to necessarily maintain I don't do eye contact very well anyway, but you can kind of walk around, and because you feel like you're there, you kind of appreciate, I think, a more natural kind of conversation. I'm not sure that's exactly what you asked, but certainly the kind of dialogue that you can get is less formal.
I think that dialogue, how you construct a scene, coming as a writer, you're creating a blueprint or a screenplay or you're architecting the story and the scene.
I mean,
are there things that you're going to have to think about very differently rather than we'll just take the scene and VR it?
Yeah, I mean, we just, apart from the InVision kind of conversation with the camera, we just did the kind of normal voiceover, which is kind of like, I guess, a voice of God. But I wrote that in the same way I would normally do. So I don't know any more than that.
Neil, probably more pertinent in what, drama, I suppose? Or maybe in sports.
Yeah, well, drama, documentary making as well, because there are a number of documentaries that we've made, and actually a really interesting example, a film that we have on the app from Surround Vision that's called Growing a World Wonder, and it was a film that was commissioned for the UN, and it was a project planting a line of trees across the desert in Senegal to create new communities, and the writing for that felt very personal because the voice of the story was a young girl who was a local villager, and she was talking about the effects or what this project would do to her village, and she was talking about life in the village. And it was so, it was so emotionally engaging having this young girl with a very personal point of view. So in documentary making, that was, I think, point of view actually. It's thinking about the point of view, whether it's first person point of view, which a lot of people are experimenting in VR, but also working out, I suppose it's writing to give you a feeling of being in the scene. And we were, this isn't quite writing, but we were filming with a few of the cast of Fantastic Beasts, where to find them the other week. And that was really effective because Eddie Redmayne was addressing the camera and talking to the camera in a very personal way, in a very natural way, and bringing him into this, bringing you as the viewer into the conversation. And I think that because it felt so personal and natural, that those two combinations were, those two elements were really effective. But writing for drama, we're still exploring that at the moment because it's about what the words that are being spoken, but about the environment as well. So it's probably more consideration of how you're writing the environment and how you're scripting the scene that you're in, and what the shooting script is.
I think it's also how you get them to change direction, because all the things you've talked about are one person's point of view, and you can follow that so beautifully. You can hear that point of view, and as you were saying, you feel like you're more casual or more you're talking personally to the viewer. They're almost experiencing it with you. But when you get into a drama where you're trying to sort of get people to do things, that's harder.
Yeah, and also it depends if it's an interactive drama or whether you're a voyeur and you're just watching the action take place around you, and it's considering all that. We're still experimenting with it at the moment, and actually, again, why we're working with the drama department, because we want to get the writing community to come to us with ideas, have conversations around what we found, what works in VR, what doesn't, because it's the writing community will really help to drive this forward. So it's probably it's having those ideas brought to us, but having conversations about how to script it.
Anything else? There's one over there by the wall. You can get the mic to him with the hat. Yes, I think it's no, sorry, behind you with the hat. Put your hand up so she can see you. Yep. Anybody else I can give a mic to? No, not right now. Go ahead, tell me who you are. Yep.
I was just wondering if there's any research going on in sort of terrestrial and satellite side of broadcasting VR over terrestrial and satellite sort of thing, in terms of BBC or Sky, looking into that.
Broadcasting VR over satellite, well, yes.
Yeah, we've discussed it, but we're not. At the moment, it's the delivery platforms or the traditional delivery platforms that we're talking about. We've discussed whether that might be feasible and that's something we would look into, but we've not put a lot of resources into researching that just yet.
Is it because it's too mass market, or is it because it's too expensive, or why?
Sorry, why we haven't?
Yeah, why you haven't
done it yet? Because
too
it's
difficult.
It's because it's too early. To be honest, yeah, because there are platforms out there that we deliver to the likes of Oculus and Google, and the delivery method of the files at the moment is via the apps, and it's having your phone in a headset that gets it there. But it's certainly on the roadmap of discussion.
Somewhere.
Yeah, we've got
a
very
bit
big
down the
roadmap.
pike.
Yeah.
Yes,
I think
Ken.
that there's quite a lot of live streaming going on. I think Matavision is doing it back there with live concerts to the world, streaming to the world. I don't even know whether it goes via satellites or whatever. We just push buttons and you see things these days. But I think that is starting to, I know that they also are videoing 360 operations that I know Shafi Ahmed had one that he did that 50,000 surgeons watched it to see this particular procedure. I know that's not the kind of things you want to put on TV, but the question was about distributing it and streaming, and it seems to be a challenge, but possible now. So when everybody on Earth is watching this stuff, then it will be a bigger challenge than...
Could be the return to event viewing. You know,
Yeah,
viewing.
exactly. Watch the operation. This has been fascinating. I've been told to kind of wrap it up. Remember that you have the play pen in the back. You can play some more back there. I also think there's a free drink. First, before we end, I want to thank Terry Marsh, who's the producer. She's sitting in the front here. She's done a fantastic job. And thank you all for coming, and also help me thank my panel, Tamzin, Spencer, Neil, and Ken Blakeslee. Thank you very much.
Thank you.